Today we're going to steal some textures. Since clay is very malleable, I'm rolling out a slab here to put a texture into. Now you can put a texture into pretty much any form that you can press from the back. The slab just is the easiest and the quickest to show you how. I initially rolled the slab out on canvas, but here's a piece of burlap which has a much looser weave, and I'm going to put the slab down on top of it. I'm also going to use the measuring sticks on the side because I don't want to apply too much pressure to the surface. Rolling it with the measuring sticks allows me to just put a little bit of pressure on the top. You can't see it from this side, but there is a texture that's being pressed into the other side of this. We'll show you in a moment. I also have this old placemat that has sort of a corduroy texture on it. I'm going to put a texture on both sides to show you that you can do it from the top or the bottom. Using the sticks on the side allows me to give quite a bit of pressure to this while still not pressing too hard into the clay. And as you can see, the corduroy texture has come off on this side of the clay, and as I turn it over you can see on the back that the burlap texture is ingrained into the clay on the other side. Now most times you won't need a texture on both sides of a slab, but in case you do, I'm going to show you how to line a couple of textures up relatively easily. I keep a couple of bins of things like doilies and different types of cloth. I call it my texture library. And in this case, I'm going to use one that's a round doily, and I'm going to press it in the top of a slab right now. You can see that I'm using the measuring sticks on the side so that I can apply quite a bit of firm pressure and at the same time not go too deeply into the slab. Now I'm taking a needle and I'm going to mark the center. Because this is a round design, it will make it very easy then to pick it up, keeping the cloth on there all the time. And then I'm going to put the sticks back in place. After I put this other doily on here, there we go, we're going to put the sticks down. And then I'm going to put the other doily on top, and I'm going to line up with that little center hole there into the center of this doily. And I'm going to roll it across the top of this as well. And this will put a texture into both sides, and it will line up the centers. Once again, I can apply firm pressure because I'm using the limiting sticks on the side. And when I peel this up, you can see the texture on one side. And then if I peel it off the other side, you see the texture on the other, and the centers align. I'm going to cut off some of the edge here because my slab, of course, wasn't as wide as my doilies. And I'm going to center this with the design on the front. This is just a container that has a nice round lid, and I mark the clay, and I'm going to use a clay knife and go around the edge. And there you have a round disc slab. It has a texture on both sides, so they're both aligned with the center. There's a little hole in the middle, so I'm going to grab a little bit of clay and I'm going to plug it up. Next, I've rolled another slab and I'm going to pull out another part of my texture library. These are plastic sheets with textures on them. Some of them are made for putting textures into clay, but others are sold for putting textures into your picture. You put this underneath a piece of paper and then you would rub your pencil back and forth on it and it would create a texture there. The key to doing this is to have your slab rolled first and to use old clay. If the clay is too new, it'll be too wet and it will stick to the mold that's underneath it. Older clay rolls stronger slabs and is also less sticky, so it will peel off of this sheet. Also keep in mind that these sheets have two sides and the reverse of the texture is on the back. Now here I've taken this sheet and put a cobblestone texture on this slab. Here I want to look at some quick and easy ways to put lettering into your clay. Sometimes your handwriting isn't exactly what you want, and you might want to use a fondant cutter like this one. You don't have to press the cutters all the way through. You can just leave an impression on the surface of the clay. Now here I have rubber stamps, and it came in a nice set like this. I pulled the word "word" out and I pressed it into the clay. Rubber stamps work to impress into your clay just like other objects will. If you want really large letters, you might even use cookie cutters, cut them out separately and put them on the surface of your clay. Or you can use them like the fondant cutters and just push them into the surface. If you look around, you can find many different alphabets in many different forms that will press into your clay. Here I have a pastry tool that's made into its own little press. You take the letters and you put them in backwards like it's in a printing press, and it will print into your clay. Now this only works in a straight line if you have it in the bracket, but you can use it by hand. Also, I have alphabet pasta here. It takes a little while to sort out the individual letters, but once you find them in the container, you can then press them into your clay and leave them there. They will burn out in the kiln and leave a hole behind that's the shape of the letter that you pressed in there. As you can see, this takes a little bit more fine manipulation to get your word spacing. Also, if you want punctuation, most of that has to be done by hand. This is a plastic candy mold. You can also get soap molds like this. They're not necessarily good for clay in themselves because clay usually sticks to them, but you can make an impression from the back side that wasn't the molded side, and you can make your own mold from them out of plaster, and this is a press mold. Press molds are easy to use. First, I estimate about how much clay is going to fill the mold, and then I'm going to make a relatively smooth ball out of it. Once I've made the ball smooth, at least on one side, I'm going to then press it into the mold, put it in the center, start from the center. Don't use too much pressure because you don't want to break the mold, but if you just press it around, and you will see that it goes into all the little crevices, give it nice even pressure on the back. And then if there's a lot extra on the back, you want to trim it off so there's just a little bit extra. So I'm going to use this rib then to trim off the back. And once it's flat on the back with just a little bit extra, I'm going to use the smoothness of the table to create a suction seal on the back. I'm pressing down firmly but not really hard. Once again, I don't want to break the mold. But when it's stuck, then I can pull it off. And there we have a molded pumpkin with a lot of detail, just like the original mold. I used a rib then as a spatula to pull it off the table, and I'm going to take a finishing tool here with a little knife on the side, and eventually I'm going to just trim up the edge and get it nice and neat, and I'm going to take off the place where the lollipop stem would have been on the bottom of that mold in the first place. Once I've trimmed the whole thing, I can use it in my sculpture. Finally, I'm going to show you how to use a cookie cutter. It's a pretty simple operation. You can find many different cookie cutters in seasonal packages at stores. This is a leaf shape. Here's an oak leaf. I have several different leaf shapes that I've collected over the years. Some shapes are better suited to using a cookie cutter than others. Leaves are very flat to begin with, so they lend themselves to a cookie cutter very nicely. But as you saw, on this we had squared off edges, and I'm going to pat it down and thin it out a bit along the edges especially so it looks more leaf-like. Then I'm going to draw in some veins on the top. Notice that there's a little bit of the texture from the palm of my hand that ended up in the leaf as well, and this is going to add a little bit more to the realism. Then here we have that leaf shape again. It still could use a little bit more finishing, so I'm going to pat it out one more time to smooth it out, and there you go. Here I'm going to leave you with a few examples of stolen textures, shapes, and forms. You need to decide now how you can use this in your own artwork.